Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been one of my most anticipated interviews, really, of the entire Guy Gig Show history because when I read this young lady's work and when I started to get connected with her, I really felt like this was someone that did the things and was doing the things that I wish I was doing even before I started guiding gigs. Because if I had read books like this, I would have felt so much more confident and I would have had so much more understanding of the connection between my spiritual life and my creative life, which, if you've been listening to us at any time, you know that's what guiding gigs is all about. So it is with a huge amount of pleasure that I welcome Marlita Hill to the Guided Gig Show. How are you?
I'm great, Alan. Thank you so much for having me.
It is absolutely a pleasure. And as I just kind of started to fanboy already, I really do feel, as we are even starting this conversation, that there are so many people who feel alone when it comes to this topic. And our topic, of course, is faith, creativity, and the connection between the creative life and Christian life and being able to
Mhm.
handle both. And I guess to kind of give you like almost like the hard question right off the top.
Let's
Do you
go.
have you ever felt the same way? Have you ever felt like nobody understands, even as you start this conversation? Am I the only person that's ever felt like, wait, I'm on an island here. Like nobody. As soon as I get excited about this, I'm like, no one else is getting excited about this. Is that you too sometimes?
Okay, so I'm I gotta be honest. So, okay, let me say it like this. I've been doing some interviews with artists, just hearing artist stories and things, and I have discovered so far that there are kind of two paths. I think there are more, but so far I've discovered two in talking with artists,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm interested to see if there are more. There's the path that you're talking about, right? Where an artist intuits their creative life young, they feel drawn to this, and either they've been a Christian all their life, but they've had people either explicitly tell them that they shouldn't be pursuing this life in art as a Christian, or they've never heard anyone talk affirmatively about it. So they're unsure, right? And so they go through their life feeling inside this is what they're supposed to do, but not having any affirmation, any support, or outright opposition to their art life. The other path that I hear, which is actually my story, is where we start off in our faith and it's the Lord that leads us into our creative life. And so that was my path. I started out in dance ministry at 15. I had no desire to be an artist, Alan,
Mm.
none at all. I wanted to be a psychologist. And just really quickly, there was a couple. Alan Hattie Hollingsworth, they had this program called Boss Building on Spiritual Substance, where they would teach youth entrepreneurship based on biblical principles.
Mm.
And they have this resort up in the Idlewild Mountains in California called Al Hattie's. So my trainers, I would go with them and hang out with them and go to these resorts and I would work. So one day I was working this resort and I was 15 years old. You know, I was in church. I knew that God would talk to me one day, but I thought, oh, when I was an adult, because like he talks to adults,
Got
not
it.
people.
It's a
And
talk to
so
kids.
they announced this dance ministry over the speaker that was about to minister. And I heard this voice say, go watch. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know who it was. And I was like, no, I don't want to go watch. Because my granny had taken us to all kind of really cool theater and dance and music events. So I knew what the arts were. I just had no interest in pursuing them. And it said it again. And then it said it again, each time pressing a little more. And then finally I was like, oh my, I don't even know why I responded or paid it any mind, but I did. So I went and I sat and I had an attitude, of course, and I sat like, what's the deal? And I sat there and they started to minister. And Alan, it was like an elephant sat on my chest and tears were just pouring down my face. I didn't know what was happening. So one of the program mentors, she saw God dealing with me and she said, do you want to meet them? And I was like, yes. So she took
Oh,
me
so
upstairs.
precious.
I prayed with them. And then that was a weekend. And then that Tuesday, I was at rehearsal. And that
Wow.
changed the entire trajectory of my life. So I ministered with them for about 8 years. That's where I discovered I had a gift, not only specifically to teach and to choreograph. And then from there, the Lord led me to leave there and go to school, which was its own 9 year journey. I didn't get into a dance school until I was 27.
Now I love, yeah. See, I love the fact that you grabbed right into that journey because
Yes.
even as I was listening, I was thinking to myself, there's so many artists as you mentioned on these two paths, the
Right.
possible paths, and there's so many. One of my favorite scriptures in the Bible is Psalms 25:10, which is all the
Mm.
paths of the Lord are full of mercy, and it's like okay, there's so many ways God could lead us, but He doesn't always lead us the same way into our path.
No,
And
he
so you just
doesn't.
you just touched on your early life as far as a
Yeah.
dancer and learning about this. So yeah, I guess now take us a little bit into that journey in between where you start to have a calling, you start to feel that this is what God wants you to do and what you
Yeah.
love to do. And it's really important to put that out that it's not just
Right.
something that felt called, but it did match your passion. It did open your eyes up to something that you loved and was really the desire of your heart. But yeah, tell me a little bit about the opposition. Once you started to realize that this was
Absolutely.
something you wanted to do, and again, in your book, A Divine Discord, we're going to talk about that a lot more in the next couple of minutes or so.
Yeah.
But it does seem, and I love when I do these interviews to think about the artist that's listening, where they are right now. So I'm pretty
Hmm.
sure many of them, if not all of them, have already adopted kind of like thinking like, okay, this is something I love, this is something I want to do.
Hmm.
But most likely they also have gone through what you went through, maybe not to the extent, I don't know. So can you
Right.
describe like how that started to hit you in terms of once you realized this is something you want to do, but there were going to be obstacles in the way?
Sure, absolutely. So really quickly, those two paths that I told you about, the one who has opposition or doesn't have affirmation, like
Mm-hmm.
the questions they're asking, and I'm sure you can attest to this, is God okay with this? This is the artist that I feel, right, that I'm supposed to be, but I don't have any support. Is God okay with the artist I feel drawn to be?
Yeah.
Right? Which is the path you're on. The path that I was on was, who in the heck is this person you're telling me I am?
So more
Right?
identity then.
It was more identity. So for me, the Lord was telling me and showing me this is who you are, but nobody else thought that about me.
And
Like I said,
you talk about feeling alone. That is
yes, yes. And so like I said, it took me 9 years to get into an undergraduate dance program. I didn't know you had to know how to dance to get into school for that. I knew nothing. I knew nothing. This was not the path that I was going on. And so for me, validation was so important because there was no one that was interested in me. I was noticeably behind everybody else.
mm,
When I say noticeably, I mean noticeably. My family, God bless them, we're good now, but following your dream as an artist is cute at 18, 19, 21, maybe 22, 23. You start hitting 24, 25, 26. All my other friends are finishing graduate school, married, having multiple friends, and I'm still the broke artist.
oh,
Trying to get into dance school. And so nobody understood what the heck I was trying to do. They thought I was wasting my life. And I remember the Lord had to teach me, they don't see what you see. I don't talk to them about your life. I talk to you about your life.
mm,
Right. And so from what they see, they're only trying to protect you. Right.
yeah.
Even if they have to shake you violently out of your delusion, it's a protection for them, but they don't see what I show you because it's your life I'm talking to you about. So what I struggled with was the same kind of isolation that you feel, but on the other side of, God is showing me this, but I don't have anybody to go talk to about this. I didn't have the connections with other artists that I do now. So it's interesting as I'm saying this out loud, there is an isolation that we both experience. It's almost like we're standing at the same door, but we're on opposite sides of the door, touching the same door,
Right, right. Almost
wanting
like yeah, like the one way mirror kind of thing, where
ex-
like I noticed somebody on the other side of this, but
exactly, exactly. So we feel this isolation and we experience this. We just experience it and we come to it from different paths.
got it. It's so insightful. And again, I feel
Mm-hmm,
like even as we started, I thought about, whether or not we should really just focus on, because one of the things I did in my book when I first started talking about this is I had to
mm-hmm.
decide who my audience was. Am I
Yep.
talking to people who already get it, that there is a connection between our spiritual life as Christians and the way we walk in mainstream culture in secular, and I'm that's one of the things I highlighted in your book immediately when I knew that you were my sister in this area, because you wrote that you don't believe in the word secular.
Correct. That's why I put
And
it in
I'm like,
quotes.
yes, finally. One of my favorite quotes is by
Yeah.
Abraham Kuyper, a philosopher, who said, "There's nothing over which the sovereign God does not cry, mine."
Correct.
And that is what's so important. But I had to decide, like, am I going to talk and share with artists who are struggling with that thing, like you said, whether or
Mm-hmm,
not this God is okay with this, as you mentioned, or am I going to write and reach the ones who kind of know it's okay, but don't know how to make it work? And I
mm-hmm.
chose that second group. I chose, as we started to God Against, I said, you know what? I don't want to argue with people.
Right.
I don't want to fight with the people in the church who are still saying, why are you out there on Saturday night at the club? I don't want to argue with people who are still in that mindset of, oh, if they don't have Jesus in the title, then you're not worshiping, right?
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
really decided in my head that I couldn't deal with that, because I had, I think, a stronger identity, and maybe we can speak to some of these people in, like, even in your
Mm-hmm.
experience,
Mm-hmm.
where they've passed. Again, you were hearing the voice of God. You were clearly exploring this and going to go for it, even if it took you 9 years. I'm thinking about Rachel and Jacob, and the
Mm-hmm.
whole waiting for 7 years, working 14
Yeah.
years when you know something is yours, and you're like,
Yeah.
everybody else is going on and follow through their dream, and they're figured it out. So my question to you is there still a stigma? Unfortunately, weird to ask, but I had to ask it. Is there still a stigma for those of us who are in the mainstream culture, exploring our gifts and professing to be Christian? Do you still see that as a problem for us artists that are in both worlds?
Oh, absolutely. And to varying degrees. I think that there is, okay, let me go back. Because when I was writing my book, I had to do the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who am I speaking to? And at first, I thought, well, I haven't gone through that. I haven't had those struggles, Lord. So I almost felt like I wasn't qualified to write to people who were struggling with, is this okay for me to do these things together? And
Mm-hmm.
the Lord had to show me, like, no, 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 because of the way I've taken you, you're the perfect person to talk about it. Like, I'm over here saying, no, no, y'all, the water's fine over here.
Yeah.
Like, come, right? So for me, what I realized was number one, I, I'm not talking to the church.
Mm.
I'm talking to the artist,
See,
right? And
yes.
so for me, it's like family, right? You have family and sometimes they just don't get it, right? And so you have to go and do you while family gets itself together. It's not that you don't disconnect. I'm sorry, it's not that you disconnect from family,
Right.
but you got to let family do what it does and just kind of move it to the side a little bit so you can go forward. And for me, that's what my work is about. I'm going to speak to you, the artist, to let you know, no, sweetheart, yes, that is God that is speaking to you. Yeah, I know you don't think this is what a Christian's art life should be. You prayed God use me and you keep hearing R&B songs and not worship songs. You keep hearing science fiction, right? And not God is not dead. No shame to that, right? But you keep hearing these other things. Yes, that's him. Go do that. It's always been him. While we pray for the church to get it together.
Yes, exactly.
And right, so I'm not speaking to the church. I'm not trying to convince the church. My audience is not the church. My audience is the artists in the kingdom, right? To let them know God is bigger than that four wall building, right? So you are
Absolutely.
just as much in the kingdom. You are just as much a part of kingdom purpose. God is speaking through you just as much as he is anybody else. And this is how that happens. So
Yeah.
I'm in the how conversation as well.
Thank you so much for like affirming me, and that's a validation I kind
Mm-hmm.
of need to just to hear again that our voices. I said this to somebody when I was trying to explain what I do. I
Yeah,
said that artists need a place, a space, and a voice.
I
That's
love
really all
it.
we're trying to give them as
Mm-hmm.
kingdom Christian artists working in wherever God has put us. I mean, the Colossians says it so clearly: whatever you do it all into the glory of
Right.
God. Like there's no questions to me when we talk about this. But yeah, I'm so glad you addressed it to the person who might still be struggling, who
Yeah.
might still be dealing with, like you said, with those other voices saying that what they're doing is not valid in the kingdom whenever
Mm-hmm.
they are stepping out and approaching their talent. I wanted to take it back to you in terms of like that journey that you took to where you started to realize. So let's kind of advance it to you got into dance school, and I believe it was
Mm-hmm.
Maryland that you went. I
Mm-hmm.
believe you said
Towson
in the
University.
book you said you had not a penny to your name or something like
Not
that,
one.
and you just said, you know what, God, I'm going to figure this out, even though people were telling you no. So take me from that step of faith to where now not only did you walk through and actually become the dancer, become the artist that start to excel, but you also felt like you need to teach others. Like, how did that process happen?
So I gotta take you back a little bit. So I got into Cal State Long Beach right after high school.
Okay.
Actually, I went to junior college for a couple years, and then I went to Cal State Long Beach, and I got into the university fine, but I didn't get into the dance program. And they had this policy back then. I don't know if they still have it, but you could only audition 3 times. And then after that third time, if you didn't make it in, you could never audition for that program again. And I remember the last time that I auditioned, and I waited till everybody had left out of the building before I checked, and I didn't make it. And I remember I wept in that building. I just felt so alone. And it was in that season after that. And I just felt so broken, so lonely. Again, families like you're wasting your life. God's telling me do this. Teachers wouldn't even talk to me at the university because I wasn't one of the good ones.
Mm,
There was one woman, well, two, Elizabeth Morth and Erin Landry, who God sent because he'll always send somebody to be like, no, babe, you're on the right path. Anyway, so in that season of loneliness, the Lord was like, I want you to go teach. And I'm like, go teach. I can't even get into school to learn. What are you, what are you talking about? Go teach. So, I had my fits for a while, and then I ended up finding this family studio in Carson, Linda Buell's dance workshop, who gave me an opportunity to teach little children. So that's where outside of dance ministry I started. So then I graduated from Towson University and moved back home, did my student teaching. I was engaged at the time. And so I moved back to California to do my student teaching and was like, this is not it. So I had
oh, see,
I worked all
I lasted about 8 years, and then I was out. I knew from the get go I
I
wasn't
was
gonna
like
last a long
this,
time.
because my degree was in dance performance with K through 12 certification, so I had to go and do my student teaching at this high school, and I was like,
We are the
yeah,
same. I had the
no.
exact same experience with band. I was in this band thing. I'm like, I don't know what the clarinet's supposed to do. I play piano. I mean, you want me to
I was
teach this
like,
French horn after 2 weeks? Like,
mm-mm.
no, and these kids are look older than me, and look like they could beat me up. I
And
was
yeah,
out. Oh gosh,
and
I
my
know
student
exactly what you
teaching
mean.
was I was teaching dance to a PE, a dance class. It was all the students who didn't want to take PE, so they took dance.
Oh God.
It's not that they loved dance, they didn't want to
No, they
take
were like
PE. So
looking for the
that was,
easy out.
yes. And I came fresh out of school. I was like, I'm ready to teach dance. So anyway, I was like, no. So I thought, okay, I also loved arts administration, or I thought I did. And so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna figure something out. So I went, my friend got me a job at prepaid legal. So I was sitting there at prepaid legal in this very dark, depressing office. but it gave me some money. And I got an email because I was on all of these like listservs, all these art lists, and just trying to figure out what was going on. And I got this one email that said, "Are you interested in teaching?" And usually I would have just erased it, but the Holy Spirit was like, "Open that." And so I did. And it was this woman, my dear friend still to this day, Charlotte Naveau. And she said, "I came to observe you while you were teaching, while I was doing my student teaching." She came to see me and she said, "I love the way you teach, and I want to invite you to apply for this new art school." And I was like, and at the time I was married. And so I told my husband, I was like, I got this email inviting me to teach. He was like, "I thought you said you didn't want to teach." I'm like, "Well, I mean, I don't know." Alan, I went to this interview and was like, oh it was a brand new art school in
Wow.
downtown Los Angeles. It was incredible. Like everything I had ever wanted to teach in. And I got to build that school from the ground up. I was
Whoa.
the second dance teacher hired there. So it was nothing but paint and air. So I, along with Charlotte and the other teachers, got to like literally imagine this school into place. And so I spent 7 years there. And that's where I really blossomed. I wrote my second book there. I started my choreography, like outside of the church, like my choreography journey there. That school gave me so much um, in terms of the validation, the clout, the all kinds of things. I mean, we had all kinds of companies because we were on Grand Avenue. So anytime professional artists and companies would come to do their Los Angeles season, they'd come to the school. So I
Wow.
got connected with, I mean, I was connected in the community. Like I blossomed because I had a platform and I had a place and I had space and I had
Yeah.
a voice, right? And
I
I
love
had
it.
students and I just got to dream of all kind of things that I could produce and I had, right? So it was an incredible season for me that I went. And then in 2016, God said, "All right, it's time for you to leave." That was like,
Isn't it? It does, isn't that? I was just thinking because the scripture that came to mind is another one from Proverbs. We did a whole study last year of Proverbs in our church, so that's the one that's in my head the most.
mm,
And it said, do you see a man skilled in his work? He will serve before kings. He will not serve before average people. Like it's
yeah.
just God clearly was like, okay, number one, you were faithful in that season of trying to make
Mm-hmm.
it. And I'm really again thinking of our listeners, someone who number one went through what you went through with trying to get in, trying to get
Yeah.
a place, trying to find someone to actually take them seriously, right?
Right.
And all this time, I keep hearing you say the Holy Spirit said, and you were listening, and you were like, you were guided by that faith, by that understanding, that connection with the Lord, that you never allowed those voices to overtake what God was saying inside of you, and
Right.
then you ended up in this platform. So now, I guess to fast forward, you are now hearing once again, kind of like leave the place where you are, go to a place where I would show you that Genesis 12 moment, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I want to equate it back to those who are listening. Do you ever? Well, I shouldn't say do you ever struggle. That's silly. Um, I guess I'm thinking about the person who might be struggling with that discerning God's voice as an artist,
Mm-hmm.
because I think so much of us we have this amazing well of creativity on the inside, and I think many of us do struggle with, okay, is this just me wanting to do this so bad, or
Right.
is this really the Holy Spirit? Is this God? Is this really in tune with my faith, especially when it comes to huge moves like that? So how did you
Yeah.
discern that? You seem very clear, and I don't mean to like dismiss it, you know what I mean?
No,
But
no, no,
there
no.
might be
Yeah.
somebody that's like, okay, she seemed like she just heard it like click and she was able to move. Like, was it? How did you discern that voice and know that it was God moving you in your artistic career?
Okay, so I have to answer that by saying this. The first time, right, that I ever remember hearing God speak to me was at 15, and all he said was, "Go watch."
Right.
And I did, right? And I didn't know what it was, I didn't know who it was. Um, but I went and I watched, and then good things happened. And then that voice said something else to me. And I was like, okay, that sounds like the same thing that told me to do this. And I did it, and good things happened. And then that voice told me to do something else, and I did, and good things happened. And so, one of the things that the Lord taught me is hearing God is like developing a muscle. You don't jump for the first time lifting weights into 200-pound weights. You don't. You work the muscle. So when God spoke to me, he didn't first tell me, leave your job, go do this and such. He introduced himself to me. There were small things,
Yeah.
right? Go sit and watch. Go do this. And so I learned this voice over time to the point where there was, I know him now. And I ask people, I'm like, if your mother was calling you, or if not even calling you, if your mom was speaking in a crowd of people, would you be able to discern which voice was hers and which wasn't? And people would say, yeah. And I'm like, but how do you know? And they're like, because I'm used to hearing it. And I'm like, it's the same thing, right? The reason I sound so confident is because I've spent time learning that voice,
Hmm.
right? I
Absolutely.
took a risk, and that's the thing, because in the Kingdom Art Life, in one of the modules, I say when we think about trust in God, because it's really a matter of trust. It's about trust and confidence, right? And so when we're talking about, we want to follow God, we want to develop more intimacy, we want to have more trust. I said, but we think about it like baking a cake, right? So you go get me the ingredients, and then I'll use the ingredients you gave me to bake the cake. So we're
Right.
waiting for God to give us trust,
One little
and
piece
then
at a
we'll
time.
use that trust to trust him. But that's not how trust works, right? Trust is risk. You take a risk on something that you've heard, right? And then when you do it, you find out, oh my God, that was God. And then confidence is built. And then you use that confidence for the next thing that you hear. And you go, oh, I don't really know, but this sounds good. So I'm going to try it. And then you find out that is God. And then more confidence is built. Or you find out it wasn't him. And then the grace of God is there to cover you, because how are you going to fall if your heart is to learn? Why would your loving father punish you for making a mistake when you're trying to hear him, when you're learning? That's not the God that you serve, right? And so that is how I have developed that clarity and that certainty. Now, do I struggle? I mean, heck yeah. We have an actively full conversation. No, God, I don't want to do that. Like, don't get it twisted, okay?
Yeah.
Don't let my on the other side of this and me talking about it. This was hard and long and lonely, and the most amazing experiences I've had in my life.
Beautiful.
They
Oh,
they they all come together. I
yeah.
wouldn't have it any other way, but it was not easy. And the thing that is not easy is the emotional struggle, right? I
Right.
mean, there were so many years that I never been homeless. I've never gone hungry. I've always had what I needed, but there were times where I was like, Jesus,
Lord, I know
where is this going to come from?
exactly,
Right. I
exactly.
had to withstand the scrutiny. I had to withstand everything that people were saying about me. Right. Uh, I can't tell you what one person said, fill in the blanks, but she was like, you ain't, and you ain't never going to be, like I had to stand there and listen to that. And I said, I refuse to let this person see me cry. And I drove around the corner and bawled my eyes out. There was a point where I was like, God, what did I ever do to you?
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
do I have to sit in this? Why is it that everybody around me is just blossoming and I'm just stuck here? Have I heard the wrong way? Like I went through it all. That's all part of it. Um, but then on the other side of that, I look back and I go, oh my God, that is Like you were bringing this thing together the entire time.
Yeah.
Whoa. And I just didn't know because I was in the middle of it. Because we have expectations of how these things are going to play out. Like the part in the book where I say, where I talk about the athlete, the two men,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I say well, let me say it like this. Sometimes, a lot of times, I'll say for me, a lot of times we confuse what we really want with the package that we hope it comes in,
Yeah.
or
I
the
love that.
timing we hope it
Love
comes
that
in, or the
analogy.
door, or the
Mm-hmm.
channel, or the whatever. And so in the book, Defying Discord, I liken it to a mate. And I say, if you ask me what I want, right, in a mate, right, what kind of guy do you like? And I said, what if I said I want him tall, 6'2", athletic build, bald head, such and such, right? That's the package I would like him to come in. But what I really want is a man who loves me, who honors me, who loves God, who treats me right, who honors his family, that kind of thing. And I said, what if what I really want doesn't come in the six
The same
two
package.
dark
Yeah.
skin, right? What if he comes in a slender, receding hairline, 5'7",
Look,
Latino
I'm
man?
I'm
Like,
I'm 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 blessed that my wife clearly was not worried as much about the package as she was.
do you know what
As
I
far as
mean?
I know, I might have to go back and check with her and be like, "Hey, honey, did this match? Did it match the label? I don't know. You said you stuck with it for a while, but you might be still trying to hope it
Yeah.
fixes itself." But I love the package idea because I think
Yeah.
so much of our artistic life is, and I hate to go there because I don't want to think in terms of comparison to worldly standards. But that's kind of what we're
Right.
saying right now, right? We're saying that we
Yeah.
have this picture of our creative life of success, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got a
Mm-hmm.
billion books on how to be successful. To be very
Mm-hmm.
honest with you, I struggle with this even in terms of sharing what I do,
I do
because do
too.
I want people to be successful? Do I want artists to have a great income to be able to, to kind of do the
Excuse
things
me.
they want to do? Absolutely. God gives us the desires of our heart. One of those
Yeah.
desires is to take care of our families, to leave a legacy for our children's children, to never
Right.
be to be never be the borrower, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are all things that should be part of success as a creative. However, Instagram, social media, all these things I think have blinded us oftentimes. So, like you just said, we don't see what we really want is fulfillment. We
Right.
think fulfillment comes from having the million followers and having the packed house
Right.
and having all the all the accolades and the Grammys and the Stellars and the Emmys. We think that that
Yeah.
package is what equates to the fulfillment and the understanding that God is really with us and that we're really
Mm-hmm.
impacting the world. And the two are
Mm-hmm.
not the same. You're exactly right.
They're
The
not the
person that
same
is
at all.
working in a church and maybe a small studio and blessing people every day in a small town is
Mm-hmm.
in the kingdom. We're talking kingdom, right? It's the
Right.
widow's mite.
Right.
It's probably doing way more for the kingdom than someone that might be in Hollywood and has the $1 million
Right.
film or the $1 million stage play.
Right.
So much of that is so like relating to me and resonating with me, and I'm sure with the listeners. Thank you so much for like even sharing that analogy. I want to pick something else from the book, something I
Mm-hmm.
love. Again, that I feel like again I wish I had conferred with you before I wrote mine. Your description, your
We'll
description
confer on the
of
next one.
yes, on the next one, exactly, the collab. So your description of going into culture as
Mm-hmm.
ambassadors is one of the best
Mm-hmm.
analogies I've ever heard about how Christian creatives,
Mm.
faith-focused creatives, actually interact with the culture. Like I read other books by Andy Crouch, Culture
Mm-hmm.
Making,
Mm-hmm.
and so other many. There've been many good books about how Christ interacts with culture, Christ in culture, Christ through culture, like all these different
Right.
ideas. But the way you described it in Ambassador, please relate to us, those people who definitely need to check out the book, Define Discord. Just explain a little bit about how
Yeah.
you define an ambassador, being an artist and an ambassador in culture. Is such a great way to talk about it.
So I'll say it like this. I had the amazing, crazy fortune of being able to finish this book in Spain. And so when I started going over there, like I've traveled before. Okay, I've traveled before, but it was like I touched the ground and I could just say I was there.
Yeah.
But this was the first time I'd ever stayed. I was in Spain for 6 months. when I wrote this. And so, and I was there by myself as a US citizen there. And all of a sudden, as I was thinking about this, it was like, what is my role here? Because I was writing this book and I was in this section. And I just started thinking, what is my place here as, I'm just going to say an American, but as an American here in Spain, as a US citizen here in Spain, right? And we think of it in different ways. Is it for me to try to bring my American culture here and invade Spain, or Altea was the place with the American culture, which I was seeing when the people from Britain would come over and they would just invade this small town and have no regard for these people's culture. They would just come and just swarm on it every July. It was incredible to see. I was like, oh my gosh. So was it that? Was it for me to take on Spanish culture and abandon my own? So all of these questions about what my place there was in interaction with this different culture started coming up. And so, I was thinking about, and I was reading, just kind of researching some of these other ideas that you've touched on, Christ through church, that kind of thing. And I was like, but people have a choice. But people have a choice whether they serve you. And so the kind of the imperialistic way that we talk about taking over, right, just didn't sit right with me. Like the way that we were talking about it didn't sit right with me. And so I was like, Lord, help me understand this. So I talk about these kind of four different ways that we engage, which is the flounder who kind of hides. Like you have Christians who are like, I don't want to be seen. I don't want anybody to know I'm a Christian. I don't want any, right? You have the hermit, and I know those are Christians who only associate with Christians. They have no interaction with secular society. They only want to dance with Christian dancers. They only want to,
Bubble.
where's the Christian dry cleaners?
Lord Jesus. Looking for the cross on every single, like, is there a cross on this? I don't see your fish. All right, I'm out of here. That's
And then
funny.
you have the imperialist, right? These are the people who think I'm supposed to go colonize culture. To heck with anybody's free will that God Himself gives them to serve Him or not. I mean, we're all going to have to account for our choices,
Right.
but you have the right to not serve Him. You have a choice that He gave you. Um, and then the ambassador, which is who we really are, is an ambassador for Christ. And so in the book, I basically talk about what makes a good ambassador. Who is an ambassador? Who's representing their government and representing their government's interests in another country. And so I liken that to what we are. What is our place? What is our role? How do we engage as Christians in secular culture, recognizing that that's not, I remember when my bishop, Clarence McClendon, he said, it is unfair for you to try to hold people to a standard to which they never agreed to live,
Mm.
right? So, me, number one, I've got to honor the choice that they have. Number two, they never agreed to live the way I live. I have agreed
You
to
made the
serve
commitment.
God.
Yes.
Leave them alone, right? Um, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And yet the Lord sends me out there. So what is my engagement? What is my interaction out there? So that's basically what that section is about.
Yeah, I loved it so much because again, because it's so much of God and Gigs was about how do we interact? How do we actually work
Mm-hmm.
day to day, daily
Yep.
in the culture to make excellent work, which I believe calls people closer than anything that we say. When we do
Yeah.
excellent work, again, the whole
Mm-hmm.
point about that proverb, when we stand before kings, I think of Daniel, excellent spirit. I think of all
Right.
the different examples in the Bible where people got the audience to actually affect the culture only after they did stuff worth paying attention to.
That's so true.
That oft was misquoted. I think it's Martin Luther talking about that people don't worth people are not going to buy shoes because they're made by a Christian. They will buy, they will want to buy the shoes because they're excellent shoes that happen to
Yes.
be made by a Christian. And I think I've seen that misquoted a lot of times. Like, people want to make it as if, oh, all we're supposed to do is represent Christ in the way we create. No, the point
No.
was make good shoes first. Like, that's the point. The point is
Yeah.
make something that people want to see, watch, consume,
Right.
enjoy, be inspired by. And
Mm-hmm.
then they will, God absolutely runs in between and under and through everything we create, even when it
Oh,
doesn't have his name on it.
absolutely.
I love that. And one of the things I want to make sure I asked you before as we start to wind it down, what is next for you? Because now you've stepped into this role of teaching others, teaching Christian artists,
Mm-hmm.
dancers. I mean, I noticed again, one of the things, maybe this has changed since you wrote it. I noticed you wrote a lot about your almost putting your own dance and artistic
I did.
side, part aside, and dreams aside. Where is that now? Are you feeling God moving you in a kind of the integration of the teaching and your creative life and your dance life? Or is it
Mm-hmm.
one or the other? Like, where is God leading you now in terms of the dreams and desires you have for your future going forward?
That's a wonderful question. So this has been, let's see, I'm 43. This all started at 15. So this has been over a 25-year journey
Wow.
to get to the point where I can say, I feel like I am just starting, period.
Hmm.
That's how I feel. Like all of this was to get me to this point, right? Um, so yes, in 2016, I left the school, the art school that I was working at, and the Lord told me, I need you to put all that down. My choreography was slowly starting to take off. I was starting to get a foothold and that kind of thing. And the Lord said, I need you to put it down for a season. And at the time when he told me to put it down, he said, I want you to put it down and develop the Kingdom Artists Initiative. And so I was like, well, okay. Uh, am I gonna be all right on the other end though?
Yeah.
Like, why now?
Like,
There was some reservation, but I did it
that conversation
nonetheless.
again, right? That back and
Yes, it was
forth.
like, okay, you've trusted me. I mean, it's worked out all this time. So okay. And so I did. In 2016, I put it down. I started the Kingdom Art Life podcast. I started with the podcast in 2015 and figuring my way through, left the school. And though I knew at the time when he told me to put it down that it wasn't forever, the longer I went into the Kingdom Artist Initiative, the dance part of me started to feel like, oh, maybe this is something I just used to do. And
Wow.
now I work with artists, right? Now that's my capacity. And, I was like, oh, that would still be nice, but it felt more and more distant to me. And so in my mind, I was like, well, maybe that's just what I used to do. And in 2019, the Lord was like, I didn't say that.
I want to hear, how everybody hears God differently. Like, I love the way God speaks to you because I'm like, I can hear it myself. Like, wait a minute. Where are you going?
I didn't say like that's not what he said to me, but it's almost as if he said that to me
Yeah,
because
no,
I went
the
to
spirit of it. Like, I could hear the spirit
yes,
of it. Is that how he kind of checks us? It's like,
yes.
yanks you a little bit.
I didn't say that. So 20 this is late 2018, early 2019. I get this email from a dear woman of mine. She was like, hey, Marlita, this is what faithfulness will get you, y'all. I had always had a desire to go to graduate school for dance, but I was like, who's going to pay for it? Who's going to let me in? It took me 9 years to get into undergrad. I don't know anybody's just going, right? And the Lord told me to put it down, and He hadn't told me to pick it up.
Right.
So, through a series of acts of obedience that the Lord told me to do, I had built a relationship with this woman. And so, 2018, she says, hey, Marlita, we just got approved for a teaching assistantship, one teaching assistantship um, at the college. You want a master's degree? That was the email.
Wow.
So, I moved to Jackson. A few months later, on a teaching assistantship, and I got my master's degree. I just graduated in May with my MFA in choreography.
Look at that.
So,
Congratulations.
yes, thank you.
Oh,
So, I just moved back to California about 3 Sundays ago. And now this is like everything is coming together because at one point, at various points in the season, I think about it like this. You know how there are exercises that work all the muscles on your body, but sometimes you're like, okay, on Tuesdays, I'm gonna do arms,
yeah.
right? Arms and back. On Wednesdays, I'm gonna do legs. And like, it's kind of like that in seasons, right? Of your life. The Lord was like, there was a big chunk of season where he developed this work. So I wrote this book, I developed this. And this season, he was like, okay, I want you to move over here. So then I did this. This is good for my multi passionates as well, right? So then he was like, I wrote this book. I did, for a season, he had me writing entrepreneurship and over here and that kind of thing. And now he's like, okay. And I looked and I was like, oh my God.
Look at all this.
And so all of this stuff is now built. And now I just have to stand in what he has led me to build all these years and move forward, which is its own new journey of faith. Because what I've learned is it takes one grace. My bishop said this as well. It takes one kind of grace to build and to get there. It's a whole other kind of grace and faith to stand in it.
Mm. Oh my goodness.
And so now that's like, Lord, I've spent so much time building it.
Building.
Now help me learn how to occupy it. I've had to change I'm learning how to change my mind. He's building my confidence in a whole different way. Like, you know, so I tell people, I'm like, y'all, I wrote the book, yes, because that's what the Lord told me to write, but I gotta walk this out just like you do.
Exactly. Oh God, it's so good. It's so true, and it's so
Yeah,
important to realize that once you do arrive, right? That's kind of like the word that everyone's like, oh, I want to arrive at this place,
yeah,
and then the cliche is, oh, it's not the journey, it's not the destination, it's the journey, right? But
yeah.
there's truth to that because every time you think you've reached a certain destination, it really is the starting point. And God is
Of
never
it.
static. God is never
Right.
stagnant. God never said, even when the I'm sorry, I just went here, immediately my ADD, my spiritual ADD went there. Um, I don't remember uh, at any point when the Israelites hit the promised land. I don't remember sitting down. I remember them going from land to land inside the promised land.
Yeah,
God
exactly.
still had more battles. It's not like they hit the Jordan and it's like, boom,
Right,
we're here. As soon as they
right.
conquered one fear and one thing and overcame it, God's like, okay, here's the next 5 or 6 steps. And when things started happening and started going wrong, if you really look at it from Joshua to Judges, what happened when things started going wrong is when they stopped fighting.
They said,
When they got settled and everybody started, all of a sudden you turn the page and all Hades is breaking loose because it's like what happened, and it's because I don't. I'm kind of just doing spiritual imagination here.
Yeah,
They thought it was done. Joshua did all the work. Okay, let's just settle down. We're good. And I don't think
yeah,
God operates that way. He's always
right.
pushing us to more and greater. And as artists and creators, I love the fact that you said that you are now in a place where you've worked hard and you've done both the business side, right? You've learned how to navigate and being in the teaching positions and everything else. You got so many skills that now you
Yeah.
can show other people. But it didn't come without that first step of risk. And I love that. I want to
No,
pull it back to that, to the risk you
lots of
took,
steps of risk.
the faith it took to step out and say,
Yeah,
hey, this I think this is God. And people around me don't think it's God and they
yeah,
think I'm crazy. But you're now seeing the fruit of that faithfulness and saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to stick with it. And there's so many artists that are being blessed right now. I know they're hearing you right now. They're like,
mm,
wait a minute. It's not just me. It's not just Alan and Marlita that are stepping out of this
mm-mm,
craziness of
not at all.
integrating our faith and our walk in the mainstream marketplace, in the mainstream arts and entertainment space. Like, no, there's many
Yeah,
of us out here, and if they're following your example, and they're how can they make sure that we tell them this right away? How can they get connected with you and
absolutely.
connect it with your teaching and your resources? Because again, the book to me is like a number one. I'm going to put it up on our recommended resources on God and Gigs
Oh,
as
thank
a
you.
number, like as a top 10 on the list of we. Anytime I find an
Wow.
artist or an author, we're trying to build this library, trying to build this kingdom, and make people
Yeah.
realize that you're not alone. So tell them how they can follow you and any other projects or resources that you can offer them where they can continue to learn and grow from what you're sharing.
Absolutely. So the best way to stay connected with me and find out, because I'm in a season of like bringing everything together, is to join my mailing list. And you can go to marlitahill.com, and it's like in this black tab at the bottom, there's or if you're on your phone in the menu, there's one.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you can find me on Instagram at I am Marlita Hill. That's two M's, IAM, and then Marlita Hill. While I get things together, because right now it's like, when you're building your house and the house is built, but stuff is a mess, you got it.
Look, look, I know all too well. You see, I mean, if you're watching the YouTube, the background, this is not what's really behind me. You can probably tell. Look, I am right in the middle of the thick of it. And you said it digitally as well. And I think this is
Yeah,
one quick thing to say to everybody. I know we're closing out, but artists, creatives, don't stop while you're in the midst of building. Just keep sharing
no,
what you just
just
did,
keep
Malik. Just keep
sharing.
sharing, keep building, keep doing what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing. It's not going to be pretty.
It's
And
not.
half the time, people don't even care because their stuff is just as messy as yours, and they just want someone to help them out and do the
Look,
thing and just get the job done.
Alan, I have wasted probably about 10 years learning what you just said,
It's
because I
amazing.
thought, and the Lord showed me it was, he showed it to me in the kitchen. I was like, is this what my problem has been the whole time? But it just hit me that for me, it took me so long for to be accepted in the dance community. I didn't look the part. I didn't look right. So I had developed this fear that if I stepped out and I wasn't perfect, that I didn't look the part, that I didn't look all put together, that no one would value what I had to say.
Mm,
And so I've had this for years. I've been carrying this, but I wouldn't release it because my logo wasn't right. My website wasn't perfect. I didn't have this. I didn't have that. At one point, my teeth were crooked. It was just all this stuff that I let get in the way that nobody cares about.
mm-mm.
They really don't. I mean, and you need to surround yourself with friends who will check you. Because I remember my friend was like, Marlita, you need to open your mouth and start speaking. People need to hear you speak.
Use your
And I
voice.
was like, I can't because my teeth are crooked. So she sent me this video of this woman that had like really atrocious teeth. She had tens of thousands of followers. She was just talking like she had the prettiest teeth in the world. And my friend said, now what's your excuse? I was like, I don't have a backdrop. She sent me a video of a woman in a shower cap on her bed, thousands of. And so she just kept checking me. And it's taken me about 10 years to get it together. And even still, I'm like, I find myself falling into perfectionism, which for me is a fear mechanism. Like that's when I know, oh, I'm focusing on the wrong things.
Yep,
This
yep.
it takes me a minute to realize it, but that's something that the Lord has shown me as
Oh,
well.
but that was a beautiful like pin to put on the end of this because we need to make sure none of
Yes.
us we've gone through it, you've gone through it. So do not let perfectionism, the fear of man brings a
Yes.
snare. That's what the Bible says, and that's what it
Yes,
is. The
it
fear of
does.
people thinking something about you. Stop thinking about that. God is thinking
Yeah.
the most of you, and He is ready for you to move forward in your creative life. Marlita, this is, I hope, is only the first of many
Yes, please.
discussions we're going to have. This is way too short, but we could go on for hours and hours, and we'll probably do something very soon where you guys will see us in another space, in another place, with
Yes.
speaking the same voice again, hopefully very, very soon. But until then, God bless you. Thank you so much for sharing with our show and with our podcast
Thank
audience,
you.
and we hopefully will do it very soon again.
Yes, please. God bless.